Everybody, welcome back to Gideon Stuff. Today, we're going to be talking about my favorite blade shape, why I think it's underrated, and why it should be your favorite blade shape too. Or one of your favorites. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm not your dad. If I am your dad, don't call. I don't want to know you. Alright, so let's go ahead and get right into the video here. What is my favorite blade shape? A straight clip point. So clip points come in a couple of different versions. I think one of the most common variations is this kind of aggressive buoy style clip point. And this is actually my favorite blade shape from an aesthetics perspective. I just think these look so freaking sexy. But when it comes to utility, my favorite clip point is a straight clip point, like you can see here on this code 4. Not to say that this kind of blade shape is unusable or not useful. It is. This is a very, very useful blade shape for a lot of different applications, but I think the straight clip point is more useful for more applications. And that's what this whole video is going to be about. Why I think this is such a good blade shape, and also why it's somewhat underrated. So I've got a bunch of different knives out here, folders and some fixed blades, because I think that the straight clip point works on pretty much any kind of knife, whether it's an outdoors knife, an EDC knife, whether it's a big fixed blade or a small pocket knife. A straight clip point is just so versatile and well-rounded, and I don't hear them getting enough love. So first thing that I want to talk about when it comes to straight clip points is variations within this classification, because you can have a lot of different kinds of straight clip points. And basically, the different kinds come down to how long the clip is, how much distance of the blade clipping the point has taken. So, for example, now we can see here on this Miguron, what's this called? Prayert 2. This is a really, really gorgeous straight clip point. You know, that's a pretty good distance. On this code 4, it's a little bit longer. You know, this is a little bit more abrupt. This one's a little more gradual. And we can go to something as short as this CJRB Shale that has just a very short clip right there. I do want to mention real quickly the Benchmade 940 with this blade here. This is technically a kind of straight clip point. I would classify this more as a spay blade because of the narrowness, but a spay blade is actually a subcategory of straight clip point as far as I'm concerned. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of spay blades in most situations just because they tend to be kind of thick just because they're not very tall, but you know, that is definitely a subcategory that's worth mentioning. Okay, so what's a straight clip point? What kind of benefits does it give you over other blade shapes? Well, let's get into that. First, let's compare a straight clip point against the blade shape that I think it most commonly gets confused for or resembles, and that is just your good standard drop point blade. A drop point blade gradually curves along the spine from the handle area or the tang all the way down to the point. And drop points are really, really nice. I love me a good drop point. I think most people do. Drop points are very, very common. They're very versatile. When I'm giving a knife or recommending a knife to someone who's brand new to knives, drop points are very commonly where I go just because they're so ubiquitous and universal. But straight clip points fill a lot of the same niches. So the difference between a drop point and a straight clip point is that a straight clip point can actually have a straight or other shaped spine up until you decide to abruptly, focus up camera, drop to the tip. So in the case of this CJRB Shale, we actually have a little bit of a harpoon going. We've got a thumb ramp. The blade kind of straightens out. It dips a little bit. And then we abruptly drop down to the point. Here's a great example of a straight clip point. This is the Hinderer Jurassic. We got a thumb ramp. The blade here is kind of dropping a little bit, and then we aggressively and suddenly clip down to the tip. We can test whether or not something's a clip point or a drop point by using like a straight surface. You can see there that it lays flat, so that is a straight clip point. Sometimes a knife can look like a straight clip point and it's technically a drop point. An example of this would be like the Devo Growler. I would kind of still classify this as a straight clip point, but this area here is technically not straight. It is actually convex, so, you know, it kind of makes it a little bit harder to call this a straight clip point. It's more like just a very aggressive drop point, kind of a Nessmuck blade almost, but I didn't want to mention that. So when we look at a drop point compared to a straight clip point, we can see that they can have very, very similar edge profiles. Typically, you'll get, here on the Praxis, we've got almost all belly, but typically you'll get a little bit of straight and some belly. Got some straight, and then we got a little bit of belly. But a straight clip point, when executed right, can actually bring the tip lower than on most drop points. So if we look at this Civivi Praxis, we can see here that the point is basically in line with the pivot. This is close to a spear point blade. On this knife here, we can see that the tip is actually a little bit lower than the pivot. And that can be, you know, more or less exaggerated depending on your blade shape. I think this is really awesome because it gives you a lot of different options for use with that tip. If you're talking like a survival knife, that means that you have a tip that's in line with your grip, which is going to be good for puncturing, which is something you might have to do with your outdoor knife, but it's also going to be really, really good for drilling, which is a very, very underrated outdoor task. So that right there is a huge benefit. For an EDC knife, it comes in handy for your utility cuts. If you want to have fine control over that tip, maybe you're opening a blister pack or you're like picking a splinter or something, having a tip that is dropped low in comparison to the pivot really, really aids in control and ease of access. Now, because you can still maintain a edge profile with some straight and some belly, that means you get all of the slicing performance of something like a drop point. You know, you got a little bit of straight here if you want to do a pull cut, you know, if you're ripping through something, got this bit of belly here. So if you want to do a continuous slice through something, or if you're crunching down on something, maybe cutting onto a cutting board, you've got all of those options. A really, really great example of a straight clip point is actually here on this TKL Knives Accomplice. This blade is almost all belly, but we drop abruptly with that clip, which means that you have a knife that is great for swooping cuts, think like skinning or something. Because you've got all this edge, you're maximizing your usable sharpened edge length. But unlike something like a Persian or even a Bowie clip point, you're not putting that tip way the heck up here where it's pretty much unusable. You're still keeping that tip right in line with your grip, which again is super, super useful. Something else that I really, really like about a straight clip point is it can give you a very acute point while maintaining strength. And I think this is illustrated best on this SRK C right here. So we can see that the way the clip here is swedged, we have a very, very, durable tip, but it is relatively slim. It's very slim compared to the blade stock of the overall knife. So we have a thin, usable tip. This is very pokey, very stabby. This is going to be great for drilling. It's going to be great for piercing, but it's also strong. It's reinforced with these swedges, and especially this big swedge right here that brings a lot of strength out to the end. And so you're not going to be damaging or breaking off your tip, which no one wants to damage their tip, right? That sounds painful. Now, I want to bring out this knife real quick. This is a blade shape that I think most people would commonly call a reverse tanto. To me, this is absolutely a straight clip point. We've got a straight back, and then we just drop down abruptly onto a completely straight clip. Yeah, that's a straight clip point. And this is a great blade. This one really, really maximizes that tip being very, very low. This almost feels like a Wharncliffe with belly. Now, you could call this a modified Wharncliffe, but I think it's just simpler to call this a straight clip point. And this is maybe one of the very best EDC profiles you could have. It's one of the reasons why I love the straight clip point on the Shale so much. We have some belly, we've got some straight, but then we have a tip that's very, very low. It's going to be great for utility cuts, scoring, all kinds of things like that. This does feel like a Wharncliffe with the added benefit of that belly. I gotta be honest, guys, I've said this before on the channel, I am not the biggest Wharncliffe fan. I know a lot of people love Wharncliffes, but I feel like they're a little bit kind of restricted to certain tasks. A Wharncliffe is great for some things, and honestly, for a basic EDC knife, there's really nothing wrong with a Wharncliffe. But there's a lot of tasks where a Wharncliffe is absolutely the wrong tool for the job. This here, in my opinion, gives you all the benefits of a Wharncliffe, plus a little bit extra, which, come on, who doesn't want a little bit extra? This is the Kubey Flash, by the way. I don't think I've been naming all these knives as I've been pulling them out. Maybe I have. I don't know. That's a Kubey Flash. That's a very, very old knife. I'm going to pull out this knife real quick. This is the Vosteed H-back, the humpback. This is a trailing point blade. And actually, this one is not the most egregious example of this. I didn't have any really, really crazy trailing points laying around right now. But one of the things that you can sometimes run into with a trailing point is that the tip is way up here where you're never going to use it. You got to like crank your wrist all the way up to get to it for utility cuts. It's great for something like if you're skinning, right? You know, you got that tip up and away out of your cutting path. But there's a lot of tasks where that tip just isn't going to be the best thing to use. If you want to pierce, you know, like a blister pack or something, it's not going to be incredible. And a Persian or a trailing point, I think are, you know, they're kind of subclasses of a clip point, right? But just straightening out that clip changes the profile of the knife, changes the way it performs, the way it feels drastically, night and day. Now, I kind of mentioned earlier that some knives can kind of be a straight clip point but resemble something else. Some knives can resemble a straight clip point but be something else. I want to bring out this knife real quick. This is the Real Steel Evolution Ironclad. And this is an interesting knife. Everywhere that you can buy this has this version labeled as the drop point. You can see here we've got like a little riser right here for your thumb. We've got a little bit of harpoon action going on. Crazy swedge. And then what happens here? Do we drop? No. We clip. And that right there is indeed straight. So in my mind, this too is a straight clip point. And I think I can say that pretty confidently. This, you know, is a straight clip point. Imagine if they didn't abruptly drop this tip off. If they just continue to follow and just round it over, you know, this one's going to continue up. Would you have a tip that is as perfectly in line with your grip as this one is? I don't think so. I don't think so. Drop points are amazing. Drop points are amazing. Spear points are even better. But a straight clip point, I think, is the best of both worlds when it comes to like the spear point versus drop point type of thing. They're just so freaking versatile. And I don't think enough companies make straight clip points. And even the ones that do label them as drop points when it's very clearly a straight clip point. I think a lot of people use a straight clip point and enjoy it, but they don't realize that they're using a straight clip point rather than some other blade shape. And so if your favorite blade shape, if your favorite knife that you own, you think is a drop point, go and see if it's actually a straight clip point. Is your favorite knife a reverse Tonto? Go and see if it's actually a straight clip point, because reverse Tontos are fake. You know, that's a conversation for another video. But I love the straight clip point. I definitely think it's the most versatile blade shape out there, whether you're looking for an EDC knife, a work knife, an outdoors knife, whatever. straight clip point is going to get the job done, and it's going to do it really, really well. There's really no downsides with this. Great edge profile, great access to the tip, reinforced tip. I mean, look at that. This knife does have a compound grind, but still, having this clip down and the way they do the swedges out here allows you to have a tip that is fine and acute, but still durable and robust. I think that's really, really cool. Straight clip points are awesome. What can I say? They're my favorite blade shape. So if you guys agree, let me know. If you disagree, also let me know. But that's going to be it from me today, guys. Big shout out to my channel members at the Cowboy level. I appreciate everything you do for the channel. If you want to become a member and support me directly, there is a link down below. As for the rest of you hooligans, if you enjoyed this video, leave it a like, comment below, and subscribe. I've been Gideon, and I'll see you in the next one. Adios.